are a couple of meeple, and help, we are trapped inside a giant alien sphere. Somebody call Michael Crichton. In the meantime, we're going to have a deep conversation about Race for the Galaxy alien artifacts.
So first we're going to assume that you've played Race for the Galaxy before, so if you haven't, then this may not be as helpful to you, but we basically just wanted this conversation to be only about Alien Artifacts, the recent expansion to the base game.
And if you're not familiar with how to play Race for the Galaxy, go play it right effing now.
Oh my god, yeah, don't let the hieroglyphics freak you out.
It's a great game.
Absolutely.
And we might cover it at some point.
Yeah, I'm sure we will. So first of all, Race for the Galaxy Alien Artifacts. This was a long-awaited expansion to just the base game of Race for the Galaxy. There are plenty of expansions out there already, but this one only worked with the core game.
Yeah, and it was actually in development for years, I think, while Tom Lehman was designing other things, and there was some delay with the art or the design, but he's had the basic idea in his head for quite some time. It just came out at the very end of last year.
Yeah, and I was so excited when I picked it up.
So it introduces like really new and radical different mechanics from previous Race for the Galaxy expansions or even the base game. It adds a whole bunch of new cards like all expansions do, but this sort of turns the game on its head and adds this crazy geospatial like board building element to the game, and it also adds space meeple.
Love the space meeple. They look like they're like doing some kind of dance.
In the future, our channel is going to be called A Couple of Space Meeple.
Yeah. In the future, there are space meeple.
So I mentioned it comes with a bunch of new cards, and a lot of those new cards focus really heavily on some of the different faction mechanics found in Race for the Galaxy, most specifically military cards, alien cards, and uplift cards are a huge part of this expansion with the new additions from Alien Artifacts. Those are the three main strategies that you will have a lot of tools to employ while you're playing the game. Even if you're not playing with the geospatial board building part of the game, you can just play this with just a normal Race for the Galaxy with new cards, but those will be sort of the more common mechanics you'll see.
And if you were just using the base game, I think uplift is pretty hard to do, but this definitely makes it very viable.
Which is awesome, because like I've never saw anyone be able to do a viable uplift strategy before, and then this expansion came out and uplift became a thing. So those crappy, like really cheap green uplift worlds now that you use to pay for other things are actually crappy. Like a reliable...
Yeah. Anyway.
You can't tell me that like Last of the Uplift Narsh or whatever the hell that card was called. No one ever played that, ever.
Yeah, what's kind of... Yeah, I hear you. Alright, fair enough. But anyway.
So, in addition to the new cards, you've, like I said, got this sort of building thing, and it's called the Orb game. And so with that, when you decide to play with those rules, you're going to get a second deck of cards, and these are basically represent the tiles and floors of like a vast derelict alien space station that's kind of like shifting and transforming, floating through the cosmos.
I'm starting to see why you like this game.
Yeah.
It's very Blade Runner-y.
Yeah. And you also get a new Explore card for your player action cards, which means there are 3 different types of Explore you can choose on your turn. So as you go and play the game, every time that someone takes an Explore action, and not just the new Explore action, but any Explore action, you're going to do what's called the Orb phase, and that's going to allow you to move your little pieces around this space station to try and discover alien artifacts, which will give you either special abilities and or points at the end of the game.
So on the cards that you're building the space station, so on the cards that you use to build the space station, you'll come across like lasers, which you have to have a certain amount of military to pass through. There are different walls. One cool thing about it is that you can kind of each person can set up their own side of the maze of the space station that's happening, so you can kind of like bend it to like make it so that your space meeple gets there first.
Or you can trap someone else in by playing like a part of the station like over the tile that they're on to sort of like trap them in like a walled area, which is kind of cool. It creates like a maze kind of thing. You feel like you're like rats like in a maze, you know, that you have some effect on the other player.
I love though that it kind of goes with that whole theme of like being in space and like not knowing like what's around the corner. I think that's a cool thing.
Yeah, I would say of all the Race for the Galaxy expansions, this particular expansion conveys its theme through mechanics better than any of the others.
Yeah, I mean, I get that like explore is like you look at cards from the top of the deck or whatever, but like
which is the universe that you're
right. But I mean, I feel like that's every explore action in any deck building like game like this. So, but this is like you're actually like physically seeing something like unfold before you, and it's different every time you play.
Yeah. And so part of the orb action is you move your guys, you potentially get these special artifacts that give you powers and points, and then you play a card from your hand that adds to the station. And so you build in this really crazy way. You can play tile cards over other tile cards, at the edges of other tile cards, and there's rules pertaining to how you place them in terms of the edges have to either match up or become more difficult to pass through.
And when we're talking about placing cards from your hand, we're not talking about the hand that you use that's on the board. Do you know what I mean?
Not your tableau of systems and developments.
It's a totally separate hand of cards or deck. And when that runs out, the game can end.
Yeah, so it adds another endgame condition. So the game will either end like normal when you have 12 cards out, or it can end if the exploration deck empties and you've completely built the station. So in that way, actually the players have a little bit more control over the pace and length of the game, which is really interesting.
But other than that, I think it's pretty much Race for the Galaxy. It's just this whole like extra
other than this whole extra game.
Well, you know what I mean. There's this whole like, you know, like there's this metagame kind of thing happening, I guess. Not really metagame. How should I say that? There's a whole separate game or separate like area that you have to think about.
Yeah, it changes the way that you think about playing the game dramatically. I don't know that I've ever seen a game reinvent itself using its core mechanics in quite the same way that Alien Artifacts does for core Race for the Galaxy. It's pretty amazing.
It makes me wonder if Tom Lehman wanted this to be Race for the Galaxy. Like, I wonder if this was his version of it, like, in his head, like, years and years and years ago when he first made it.
He posted a blog on Board Game Geek where he said that he had this idea for this type of game in his head for a while, and then he sort of, like, fit it into Race for the Galaxy because he already had, like, a framework for it, which I thought was interesting. And like I said, he's been working on it for years, so... So once the game ends, you score points based on all the artifacts you found, plus your tableau, plus some new little wrinkles, like in addition to 6-cost developments and new 6-cost developments, you've also got variable scoring planets, so planets settlements that can be worth multiple points depending on certain things. And you also can potentially score points for uplift stations, which are on the sort of exploration tiles, and sort of represent the genetic research that the aliens who own the space station were doing. And you would, in that case, you would score points for every single visible uplift station that's on the map. So that's another thing to consider when you're building the stations, that you can cover those if you think that your opponent maybe is going to get points for those at the end of the game.
Right. And then, of course, you can also get points for any of the artifacts that you find.
Exactly. So that's basically the core of what the expansion adds, and that may sound a little tough to visualize in your head, which is why we have us playing the game here, so you can kind of see what it looks like. I think even after playing it a couple times, I still had trouble knowing what the correct way to use the alien stations were, because you're gonna, if you want to explore the station, you're gonna be picking the explore action a lot, so you can get those phases in the station of moving and finding artifacts and building.
But you're also limited by, like, your space meeple can only move for movement points. So even when you're placing those cards, you have to consider, okay, like, how many turns can I go before reaching this?
And there's also the possibility that your opponent is playing not exploring the orb. They're just totally playing Race for the Galaxy normally, so you're trying to keep pace with them laying down cards every turn, and meanwhile you're running around the space station trying to grab tiles. I do think it's actually pretty balanced. We have yet to have a game where someone has been blown out, like ridiculously bad. I mean, we mostly play 2 players with this game, so it may be a little different at higher player counts, but at least between you and I, when I go full-on alien exploration and you go full-on traditional Race for the Galaxy, like empire building, we end up pretty close.
But I think, though, that, like, when you do go exploration, like, part of me kind of has to do that, too. Just to, like, make sure I'm keeping up a little bit. I mean, I can't completely abandon it.
Yeah, I mean, each player does take an orb phase if at least one player plays the explore action, but how heavily you base your strategy around that can be different.
Yeah.
I mean, So this expansion has been very polarizing to a lot of people since it came out. A lot of hardcore Race for the Galaxy fans hate it.
I'm like leaning that way.
Really?
Yeah.
But it was on your top games of 2013.
I enjoyed it for sure. We can get to that when we get to the review.
Okay. So it's been very polarizing. I am in the camp that firmly loves it. I think what it brings to the table, no pun intended, is...
Yeah, it was intended.
Get back in your space station, lock the door. I think what it brings to the table is, from a design perspective, amazing. I don't think you can take any other game and sort of use those core mechanics to make like a whole different game, and this did that, which is like really impressive, especially for a game that has so many sort of like small rules as Race for the Galaxy. So that in itself is really admirable, but I love the way it clicks with my head and the way that I think about playing the game. It adds a spatial element. You know, before you got this like...
spatial element, but I'm ching.
It adds this element that it sort of de-abstracts the core game, where in the core game you're like, I'm playing cards in front of me and this represents my galactic empire, and even though there's all this vast space between these worlds, like they're in front of me on my table, and so it kind of got a little abstracted. And this, it's much more thematic, having a little dude move around a space station and like find like alien stuff.
You're a little dude moving around a space station.
I know. So those are the things I really like about it. It's a whole new way to think about the game. It's a whole new level of the game to think about as you're playing. And it works with my brain really well. And I like the way that it adds an emphasis on the Explorer action. I always thought that the Explorer action was like the black sheep of the Race for the Galaxy action family. Like I felt like...
Really?
I felt like people didn't appreciate the Explorer action as much as they maybe should have. The only time you use it is like, oh, I just need one more card to pay for something, or I need to fish for a specific card. But it never, like, it wasn't, like, integral. You know, you could always get cards in other ways.
I disagree. I think that whenever we played Race for the Galaxy, especially in the early turns, using Explorer is really useful. And one of the reasons I kind of dislike it is that whenever you play an Explore action, you do the orb step. And I think that speeds up the game a bit for people who played Race for the Galaxy a lot and were really good at the like traditional game. I think you kind of get thrown for a loop and you're like, oh wait, I have this whole other thing to consider, and like I'm not ready.
Gotta keep those a-holes on their toes, you know? Gotta keep
Okay,
them...
you're talking to an a-hole right now, you jerk. So anyway, I can see why because I've played Race for the Galaxy for like years, like it was one of the games that actually got me back into board games and tabletop gaming. So I know that we played it a lot, like even the old expansions before we played this one, and I beat you like all the time because I think I just played a lot and like knew...
I don't know about that.
The deck. You don't know, but you did lose a lot. That we know about.
I think you're selectively remembering.
No. Anyway, but I will say, all that aside, I really appreciate the design of it. It's very cool. Definitely, like, something to check out if you are a Race for the Galaxy fan. Makes you think in a totally different way. So I will say, like, I'm not knocking that. I'm just saying, like, as, like, a purist.
As an elitist?
As an elitist, yes. My brain is used to Race for the Galaxy in a certain way, and this, I don't think that I have quite mastered it yet.
That's fair. That's totally fair. The one other small wrinkle that this adds that I really like is it if your opponent has a bunch of artifacts that they're not using for the special power and they're all face down, they could be worth points that you don't know they have. And so it adds a little bit of a mystery in terms of... In normal Race for the Galaxy, you can see how many points someone has, basically, for the most part, by looking at their tableau. Yeah. And with this... You don't know until the end of the game how many points those tiles they have could be worth, whether they have an uplift tile that's going to score them points for all the uplift stations on the board. And so that tension, I think, is really cool.
Yeah.
It adds an element of tension that was not present in the regular game.
I would agree with that point completely.
So you're torn, obviously. Tell me about the things that tear you the other way.
I think the fact that the game can end more quickly.
Yeah, you hate that. Because you have a long-term plan, and there I go zipping through this thing.
Like, especially, well, because, generally in Race for the Galaxy, this is how I typically play, is that after I get, like, maybe my first, like, 10 or 12 cards, I've, like, determined my strategy, right? Like, okay, I've drawn, like, 3 alien cards, like, therefore I'm gonna go alien. Like, but, like, with this, like, sometimes you have to, like, explore a lot to get the cards that you need to do the strategy you need to do to get the max number of points, but by then you've explored this whole station and like the game could be over and you have like 6 cards on the table, and that's not gonna do it for you.
It might, depending on if you get some good artifacts.
Yeah, but if the other player hoards all the 6 cost developments then
that's a viable strategy to keeping you from winning. That's all I have to say about that.
Fair enough, but I also think that in the other, without this expansion, if you don't go military or you don't do alien or uplift, you can still blow some people away with points with like trading for double the VPs or getting down some like production worlds and like getting that strategy like is actually really viable, is not focusing on military.
Yeah, that is the one thing. It is a lot harder with this card pool to get any sort of economic engine running. I have played games where I've only double VP consumed goods like once or twice in the entire game. If you like that sort of more multiplayer solitaire kind of, I have this wonderful empire that builds all these wonderful goods, that gets me all these wonderful cards that then turn into all these wonderful points, you're probably going to not like this. If you're a more competitive player, I think you probably will like this more. Just kind of depends on what you're looking for. But the brilliance here is that you don't have to play with the orb game. You can just play with the new cards if you want.
Right.
And you don't have to worry about exploring it. So you can get... that's why I don't understand when people are upset about this expansion, is that you can get what you want out of this expansion in Race for the Galaxy and not have to compromise with anybody else.
But I think... Okay, but to counter that, though, like, we, Race for the Galaxy... crazy people have had expansions before that built on each other. So before I got Race for the Galaxy Alien Artifacts, I had like a Race for the Galaxy deck with like 4 expansions built into it, with like Rebel, Imperium, and like all kinds of crazy things. And then you're like, okay, just kidding, get rid of all those great cards that you like got used to playing with, and now you're back to the base set and here's some new ones.
I see, personally,
you know what I mean?
Personally, I thought the Rebel versus Imperium stuff and Onward was like way too complicated for its own good. The whole like honor or whatever the hell that is with like extra points, and like it, like the game became such a bloated fat mess. And like Alien Artifacts,
I don't know, I'd go that far.
I think with Alien Artifacts, it has a focus to it. Focus to the design, focus to what it's trying to accomplish, focus to how you play it, and it reinforces the theme of what it's trying to focus on through the mechanics that it introduces, which is like... But
it's focusing on the orb aspect of it, and if you don't like that aspect of it...
Sure. That's the downside, is that if you are alienated by that, then you will not like it.
Alienated by it. This is the best podcast ever.
Go to your room.
Too late. Anyway.
So a final verdict from me. It's really amazingly designed. It brings a whole new like dimension to Race for the Galaxy. I think personally, in my opinion, it's the definitive way to play Race for the Galaxy.
Oh, that like stake in my heart.
See, I don't know how you can say that. It was on your top games of 2013.
That doesn't mean it's the definitive way to play Race for the Galaxy.
Fair enough. For me, it's the definitive way to play Race for the Galaxy. I won't not play other versions of Race for the Galaxy, but if I had my choice, Alien Artifacts all the way.
I'm just trying to figure out why it bothers me so much, and I don't know that I can...
It bothers you that I like it so much?
No, it bothers me that I don't like it as much as I think I should. Do you know what I mean? Like, why am I so against it? Maybe I'm against change. I don't know. Wait, so what did you give it?
Are you xenophobic?
No.
I give it 2 cloned alien uplift beings emerging from their growth pods out of 2 alien uplift beings emerging from their growth pods.
I give it 1.9.
See, that score is not indicative of how much you of the certain things you don't like.
Fine.
We're on a 4-point scale here. 0, half, 1, 1.5, or 2. Okay, 5-point scale.
Okay, 1.5.
1.5 what?
1.5, whatever you just said. I can't remember that.
Why don't you just go with 1.5 artist colony worlds?
That was lame even in the base game. I'm not gonna go with artist colony. Come on. What am I, a hippie?
1.5 Last of the Alien Uplift Ganache.
1.5 galactic trendsetters. There we go. I'll do that.
The Daft Punk card.
Yes, the Daft Punk card.
Well, there you go. That's our take on Alien Artifacts, the Race for the Galaxy expansion. I'm sure there will be people watching this who have something to say. Either I'm an idiot, you're an idiot, I'm amazing, or you're amazing.
All of the above. I don't know.
Or all of the above. So let us know your thoughts on Alien Artifacts, because I have never seen... This Alien Artifacts is literally the Assassin's Creed 1 of board games.
Wow, that's a really good analogy.
There you go. I'm going back to my Alien pod to study up on these.
You go back to your Alien pods, the definitive way to play Race for the Galaxy. Please. Please. Anyway. Maybe after that one, we'll have to take some space between us. But I'm cheating.
And scene.